One of the things that I see with red flags is that there's two ditches that people can kind of go into. One of the ditches is to just completely ignore all the red flags and just go for it blindly, and just because you want to be either in a relationship or you're just very attracted to that person, they can kind of do no wrong. Okay, and it's very easy to kind of fall into that ditch because you don't want to see anything bad going on, right? The other ditch you can fall into is everything is a red flag, and you want to just toss the guy out, everything that he does, right? And the other thing is that's the other way that I can also understand, because you can get very bitter um, when you're dealing with a lot of bad people. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about. I have some examples of red flags. Like, so to me, I believe red flags are just something that say caution. Look into this a little bit more, okay? Because I don't know how many times like I've really learned to just always follow my gut, not just in like dating situations, but just with people in general. So a couple examples that I have from like my dating experience. One of the examples that I want to give real quick is this. So I had one guy, he knew that I was involved in law enforcement, and he said he had gotten pulled over once for a DUI, but he didn't end up getting convicted of that. So he explained it to me. He explained um, the whole situation, and he didn't end up getting convicted of it. So he didn't have to do any like treatment or do anything for it. Um, and so I actually did look into it. I looked up that DUI. I found it, and it was true. He wasn't convicted of it, and he had actually told me the whole story that he was pulled over. He did have a drink, but he didn't have, he didn't drink enough that was like against the law. And so what they were trying to do is kind of like give him like impair to the slightest degree, which is something that the police can charge you with if you don't meet the point 0.8, whatever threshold, 0.08. I think it's 0.08, isn't it? Anyway, so he got a lawyer and ended up getting dropped. And so with that red flag, now that red flag right there, I do believe that is definitely a red flag. That could be a red flag though on different levels, okay? So like if you've ever had a family member killed by a drunk driver, like just him getting pulled over for a DUI, that would probably be enough to be like, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I can't do this. If you have ever even thought it was okay to drink and drive, I'm gonna just be resentful towards you all the time. Like I can't even do that. Now let's say he did get a DUI and he went through the whole, like he had to do all the treatment. He stopped drinking after that. He bettered his life after that. And this was like 7 years ago or 10 years ago or something like that. And now he is doing better. He hasn't drank. Um, and you feel comfortable enough with him that he, that he stopped, that he's doing better now. And maybe even have a plan for, okay, if he starts drinking again, what are you guys gonna do about that? And you feel comfortable with that, then you might be okay with the fact that he had a DUI in the past. So it's kind of like part of it is like up to you to what degree you're okay with certain red flags, and the other part is like what do you feel comfortable, and the other part is like just kind of being realistic, like what is what did he do about this? How did he improve his life after the stupid thing that he did? Now, the other story that I have for a red flag is, so I had a guy who he told me when he found out that I was in like law enforcement, he told me that, oh, he had a restraining order put against him at one point, and he said that it was because the mother of his child was having their baby, and he was trying to get a hold of her, and she wouldn't answer, so he kept trying to call her, and then she put a restraining order out against him. So just first my logic, just logic, like not even looking into it and thinking about that, I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense. Because like if you are having a baby, I've had two babies, right? If you're having a baby, usually you want the father to be there. Like usually you want someone to be there helping you through this, because it's a difficult process. Like, you don't want to have to drive yourself there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want somebody there, you want to let people know what's going on. And so for for him to say that, oh, she got a restraining order because he called her too much, like, that story just doesn't even make sense to me logically, right? So then we take it a step further. I went in and I actually did look this up. Well, the timeline didn't match. Like, he told me how old his daughter was, and the time frame of when this restraining order happened did not match up to how old the daughter was. You know what I mean? So I was just like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. And then I know I read, like, because you can usually, at least in Arizona, when you look up a restraining order, you can usually see exactly why the person put that restraining order out. And so a lot of times it'll say exactly what happened. And don't remember there being anything in there talking about her daughter being bored or anything like that. So to me, that was enough of a red flag to be like, no, there's no way that that I would want to be in a relationship with somebody like that. Because to me, like, so domestic violence is one of the hardest things really to I would say domestic violence and sexual assault are the hardest things to prove. And so a lot of times people get away, specifically men get away with like a lot of domestic violence and even sexual assault because um it's just hard to prove, it's hard to get there. So if this person, if she was successful in getting a restraining order against him, even though there was no like legal action taken, I would absolutely believe that restraining order, and I would say that's a huge red flag if he doesn't have a good explanation for it, which he doesn't. Nothing, at least that made sense to me. Um then I would say run. So just go go away and get out of there, right? Um so really these red flags, like, honestly, it's completely up to you. It's really up to the individual of how much do you want to dig into this? How much are you willing to be okay with? And um, how many red flags are you willing to look at before you say, okay, this is enough, you know? Um, so that's where I'm kind of at. Like, you don't want to just completely ignore red flags, but nobody's going to be completely perfect, right? And I'm sure that you've dealt with some things that you've struggled with yourself and that you've had to overcome. And so to me, I feel like it's not necessarily 100% ding if a guy had some issues in his past, but we want to see, did he overcome those issues? Because the best predictor of future behavior is going to be your past behavior, right? So if he had any kind of issues and he was able to overcome those issues, okay, but are you going to have a plan in place in case those issues become an issue again? Like, for example, with the DUI, like the guy who had been pulled over for DUI. Well, now we want to look at how big of a problem is alcohol in your life, because if you're still an alcoholic, if you're still drinking all the time and still driving drunk, we have a problem, right? But if you took that experience and you learned from it and you stopped drinking and you changed your life and you want to become a better person, okay, then we can talk and let's have a plan in place in case this becomes an issue again. So that's kind of my 2 cents on on red flags, but that's kind of what I wanted to try to explain a little bit more, because it could be a little bit nuanced. Like, just because there is a red flag, you want to look into it, you want to investigate. And I can tell you that somebody who is going to be toxic, they're not just going to have one red flag, they're going to have a lot of red flags. So if you miss one red flag, don't worry, there's probably going to be another 20. And that's where you have to decide, like, how many red flags are you okay with? Another thing is that sometimes people obviously are just having a bad day, and just because they aren't completely 100% gracious with you in one situation doesn't mean that they're always going to be like that. So you kind of also want to look at, is this the exception or is this the rule? And as you get to know somebody a little bit more and you spend more time with them, you're going to see for sure if this is an exception or if it's the rule.